Do you think it is possible for Alberta to become independent?
Absolutely possible. The only thing that we need is the will of Albertans. So Albertans need to vote when we have our referendum question, because it's actually rare for a country to have a clearly outlined process, a legal process for a province or state to separate from that country. Like, there's not many countries in the world that actually have that, but Canada has that through like the Clarity Act, and Alberta has their Citizens Initiative for bringing a referendum to the table. So we have a clearly outlined legal path to do it.
Ottawa doesn't speak for guys like me. Alberta does. I used to fly a Canadian flag, but now I fly the Alberta flag. It actually stands for something. I'm proud to fly the flag of a place that still promises a future for my kids.
That's right. We got to dance to our own tune, and we got to fight for our independence, because you and I know Alberta would be much better off being its own country, not just financially, which is always great, dollars and cents. That's a fact. That's a realistic fact here, that Alberta would be much better off financially, but Alberta would be much better off culturally speaking. We have very little in common with Eastern Canada. They have entitlements. We have hard work. They have government paychecks. We have entrepreneurship and private sector over here. We are inherently different. We have Western values. They have Laurentian values.
If you support these videos, please like and subscribe. I appreciate it.
And so here's where we are. And the question is, for all of us, if we don't stand for something, we're going to fall for everything. And so what are Alberta's values? And, what culture do we want to maintain? And, as Tanya well knows, we're very much big on faith, family, and freedom as defining concepts of what Albertans are, the majority of Albertans are all about. And so we're trying to preserve and enhance our freedom and our prosperity and ensure that faith is not sidelined by federal dictate.
The Alberta Prosperity Project is the not-for-profit organization leading the effort to see Alberta become independent from Canada. They've recently deposited the application to begin collecting signatures to have a referendum vote in 2026. This is a grassroots-led movement with an army of motivated volunteers who hope to see their province become its own independent nation. They've been having town hall meetings and rallies all over Alberta this summer, and will continue their education campaign in hopes of increasing support for a yes vote in the upcoming referendum. Getting that 50% plus one is the ultimate goal, but just as important is what comes after, and having international recognition will be very important for Alberta after declaring its independence. The APP had a delegation visit Washington, D.C. to speak with officials in the Trump administration to see whether they would support Alberta's effort in self-determination. The APP states that the response was positive and supportive, and they confirmed that the United States government would recognize an independent Alberta after a successful vote.
Last week, the Chief Electoral Officer announced that he's referring APP's question to the Court of King's Bench in Alberta for a ruling on whether or not that question is constitutional. In any event, the Chief Justice assigned the case to Justice Feasby, who is one of the most knowledgeable constitutional jurists on our Superior Court bench. And that case is now going to be heard this Thursday. The Eva Chipiuk and Jeff Rapp have been doing amazing work. Eva worked through the night a couple nights, and they got all their materials filed last Thursday night. So all the court briefs are in. So this Thursday, there's going to be a court hearing in Calgary where Jeff Raff and Eva Chipiuk, on behalf of the Alberta Prosperity Project, those lawyers will be arguing that there's nothing to see here. This is just a misstep by the Chief Electoral Officer, because how could a question, especially framed like this, potentially violate the Constitution when the Supreme Court of Canada has interpreted the Constitution as providing a mechanism for a province to hold a referendum on a clear question about independence, right? Like, it's just nonsensical. In any event, the Minister of Justice for the Alberta government issued a tweet saying that what the chief electoral officer was doing was bureaucratic, was not in keeping with the legislature's intention for the legislation, for the Citizens Initiative legislation, and that the chief electoral officer should withdraw his application to the court. And then the premier jumped in and said she agrees. What I expect will happen is the court will say, there's nothing unconstitutional about this question. I didn't think the court was going to move on it as quickly as they have. So I'm very encouraged by that. What if there's some goofy ruling or there's an appeal and it goes to the Court of Appeal and off to the Supreme Court of Canada? It's open to the government of Alberta in the next legislative session in the fall, coming up in September, to amend the legislation to remove this goofy section that the chief electoral officers relied on, and to change the law because they hold the keys to the lawmaking machine. The Danielle Smith government and the majority of MLAs that form the government of Alberta, they made this law. They recently amended it. They can amend it again. So there'd be an opportunity for a legislative solution. And if there's enough mischief, then it would also be open at any time for the Danielle Smith UCP government to, through a cabinet order, say, guess what? Next spring, we're holding a referendum, and here's the question. They always have that discretion.
Alberta might just be the last place in this country with a shot at a better tomorrow. But only if we find the guts to cut ourselves loose from this corrupt, parasitic system called Canada. Let's call it what it is. A country where criminals walk free, but if you dare speak out, boom, you get handcuffed and tossed in jail. Canadians have become comfortable marching to their own ruin, chanting elbows up like it's some kind of virtue when really it's the final lullaby of a nation walking proudly into the slaughterhouse. But Alberta, we've still got a chance, a shot at building something better, a society based on freedom, responsibility, and the pursuit of happiness. But it all depends on whether Albertans have the spine to stand up for it. If not, we'll go down with the rest of the ship.
I wasn't sure when Carney was campaigning as to, he was trying to portray himself as a pragmatist. And I thought maybe he's changed. Maybe he's not the Carney of the Book of Values, because it's pretty clear what that's about. It's the environmental socialism. I'm increasingly suspicious that his antagonism of the United States, our closest and largest trading partner. I'm wondering if he's doing the Venezuelan trick, Carney is, of antagonizing the relationship with the United States and to some extent others, so that it can mask and he can camouflage his economic failures. Say, we would be doing great if it wasn't for Orange Man Bad.
You know what? We saw that during the campaign. The Liberals couldn't campaign on their own record. Mark Carney couldn't campaign on his own record because the Liberals' record was his. And so they relied on Privy Council research that they only had access to, by the way, to craft a campaign of anti-Americanism. The whole elbows up thing was based on Privy Council research that only the Liberals had access to. And I think we're just seeing a continuation of that because we're in a housing crisis, we're in a healthcare crisis, we're in an inflation crisis, we're in a debt crisis, we're in a crime crisis. And the only thing the Liberals can point to is the Americans because, I hope the Liberals find who's been in charge for the last 10 years that created all these problems.
If you enjoy these videos, please subscribe and press the notifications bell so you never miss our daily updates. Subscribing is free, and you can always unsubscribe later if you change your mind. Thank you to all our channel members. I couldn't do this without your generosity. See you on the next one. Peace.